Welcome. You're watching Bartell's Backroads. You know, California is known for its filmmaking, and it's home to some of the most iconic film locations. So over the next half hour, I'm gonna take you to some of those iconic movie locations. We're gonna start right here in the City of Angels. It's been blown up, stomped on, and wiped out by a Sharknado. The Hollywood sign, Los Angeles' most photographed billboard, and an icon for the motion picture industry. But like any celebrity in Tinseltown, it's highly protected. Motion detectors, cameras, and loudspeakers are mounted all over the place to fend off paparazzi. So if I tried to race up right now, what would probably happen to me?
Helicopters would be summoned, the police are viewing you from downtown up at the bunker, the ranger stations are looking at you.
For the general public, this is about as close as you can get, a view through the fence after a long walk up Mount Lee. It wasn't always so hard to get to the Hollywood sign. In fact, when it was put up in 1923, the builders didn't expect it to be around for very long.
It was only designed to last a maximum of 2 years.
Originally, it read Hollywoodland, and it was a publicity stunt to advertise an upscale real estate subdivision at the base of Mount Lee, and back then, it was lit up with about 4,000 light bulbs.
There were lights on the sign, and then they flashed Hollywood Land.
By the late 1930s, the sign became neglected and started falling apart.
It's an eyesore, it's falling apart. Chamber of Commerce stepped in and said, we'll pay to fix it.
Finally, in 1978, the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce got some financial help from a well-known California playboy.
He after came in, donated the Playboy Mansion to a fundraiser. I think they raised about $275,000.
Once the old wooden sign was removed, the brand new metal sign was flown in by helicopter, letter by letter, and cemented into the side of the mountain. How tall are these things?
So each letter from the bottom to the top is 45 feet.
The bigger the sign, the bigger the target for vandals. Over the years, the sign has been modified many times by pranksters.
It's been changed to Hollyweed twice, one time in the 70s. The other time was in the 2000s, a few years ago it was changed. It's been named Hollyboob.
All aboard the Movie Express. Next stop, Jamestown, to do a little time traveling. That locomotive in Back to the Future 3 that Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd are trying to get up to 88 miles per hour in is actually the Sierra No. 3, better known as the Movie Queen. The iconic steam engine has been in dozens of movies. It's located in Railtown 1897 Historic State Park in Jamestown. And back in 2020, I took a ride. Are we going to be able to get this thing up to 88 miles per hour?
Not with me on it.
The Redwood Forest of Northern California has been the backdrop of multiple iconic films. In Star Wars Return of the Jedi, Princess Leia meets Ewoks and then fights off stormtroopers in Grizzly Creek Redwood State Park. In the movie E.T., Elliot got the bike ride of his life in Redwood National Park. And you may recognize this scene from Jurassic Park 2 in Fern Canyon.
And he ends up falling from the redwood forest down into Fern Canyon. The little dinosaurs start to munch on him and attack him. He jumps over that log where you see the stream coming under, and his blood flows through Home Creek after they munch him down.
The nostalgic sound of the 60s and the rumble of cars cruising come alive on the streets of Modesto in George Lucas's film American Graffiti.
Catch American Graffiti.
American Graffiti, filmmaker George Lucas's cult classic car movie that put Modesto on the map.
George Lucas was born and raised here in Modesto, California, and he grew up cruising on these streets.
Before video games, Facebook, and the internet, teenagers used to cruise the streets in their hot rods for fun. And the movie American Graffiti captured the nostalgia of one night in 1962 on the streets of Modesto like no other.
It was a great night, great music, a little bit of high school, a little bit of cars, a little bit of drama.
Nearly 50 years after the movie's release, the cars, the music, and the cruising are still celebrated in Modesto.
You know, American Graffiti speaks to so many different people.
Chris Murphy is the creator of the Historic Cruise Route, a map that allows current-day cruisers to drive the same route as the movie.
You have to go to a post-pandemic event. A cruise or a car show is like the greatest thing you can do.
Because the festival is outdoors, it's safe for everyone to join, including the Pharaoh's Car Club.
All of us we're just teenagers. We're interested in cars and girls.
Darrell Weidel was not in the movie, but he says George Lucas loosely based some of the characters in the film on the Pharaohs.
He was best friends with one of our members.
The Pharaohs may have depicted car culture in the 1960s, but today, Graffiti Summer is meant to showcase Modesto's car culture in every decade. Just east of the Salton Sea in Imperial County, the iconic Salvation Mountain makes an appearance in numerous films.
A lot of people in the valley just love me a lot.
Most notably, in the film Into the Wild, when Emil Hirsch meets the now late folk artist Leonard Knight, who built the paint-covered mountain over the span of 28 years with his friend Builder Bill.
Leonard and I put in these big overhead beams that hold the two walls apart.
Next stop, Ferndale in Humboldt County. Ferndale's on the National Registry of Historic Places, and because it's so well preserved, Hollywood loves to make movies here, like the 1995 film Outbreak, starring Dustin Hoffman, or the 2001 film The Majestic, starring Jim Carrey.
You can all go about your business now. He's not going anywhere.
There's one scene I really like, and he comes out of the theater and he gets punched in the face, right in front of that, under the American flag, right in front of the town clock right there.
When Hollywood needs a Florida lookalike, they head here to San Diego's Hotel del Coronado. It can easily be seen on California's southern coast. It's the shining star of the San Diego Bay. And its architecture is what put the resort town of Coronado on the map.
That's why I'm glad we're going to Florida.
What's in Florida?
Millionaires.
But when Marilyn Monroe stayed here in 1959, Hollywood made us believe that this very beautiful California building was the Seminole Ritz in Miami, Florida.
The mayor of Miami was not very happy that a Southern California resort was chosen to represent Florida.
This is the Hotel del Coronado, affectionately known as the Del. It's the second largest wooden structure in the world, and it's one of the last Victorian seaside resorts. It's also the film location of the romantic comedy Some Like It Hot.
About two men that witnessed the St. Valentine's Day massacre in Chicago and are in hiding now from the mob.
Those two men are actors Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon, who ended up disguising themselves as women and joining a traveling band with Marilyn Monroe.
The mobsters do track them to the hotel, and that's where all the chaos and fun ensues.
Hotel Heritage Manager Gina Petroni knows all about the movie's chaos. She curated the museum and researched the hotel's extensive film history. One of her favorite scenes was with Tony Curtis on the 4th floor balcony.
He shimmies down the front of the Del, jumps on a bicycle, and takes off.
Because it's so close to Hollywood, the Hotel Del played many roles in the movies. It's been blown up, drooled on, murdered in, and Baywatched. The Hotel Del's been featured in over a dozen movies and TV shows, and actors aren't the only famous people staying here. The hotel has a long list of dignitaries too.
Starting with President Benjamin Harrison in 1891, came to stay here. He was our first presidential visitor. We've had 11.
Westerns in California's deserts, dramas in the big cities, and comedies in the Bay. Bartell's Backroads, famous film locations, coming up after the break. If you've seen a Western, chances are at least a portion of it was filmed in California. You may recognize this film set. Today though, it's a working town. Just outside Joshua Tree and north of Yucca Valley is the dusty little community of Pioneer Town. The name may sound like something you would visit inside a theme park, but the town part of Pioneer Town is no joke.
Yeah, it's a real community, and we're proud of being a community here.
If Pioneer Town looks familiar, it might be because you've seen it in the movie Barbed Wire. Or you may have seen the weathered buildings in the TV show Cisco Kid. Pioneer Town was also the backdrop for one of Ice Cube's music videos.
All the posters and things on the walls here are from television shows.
Kurt Sauter is the historian and curator of the Pioneer Town Museum, and despite the name, he says the community was not founded by pioneers.
The town was founded in 1946 by a group of actors, including Roy Rogers, his musical group, the Sons of the Pioneers, headed by Dick Curtis.
If I ever catch either one of you on this property again, you'll wind up so full of lead you won't be able to leave it.
Dick Curtis often played the villain in movies like Valley of Terror and Santa Fe Uprising, but off-screen, he was friends with a number of actors, and at the peak of Western film popularity, he had the idea to build a versatile movie studio that would double as a working town and a weekend getaway.
And then the townsfolk would be extras. Like, they had this whole, as a self-contained movie set with real buildings.
Pioneer Town is equipped with a working post office, a soundstage, and a bar called Red Dog. Do you think there was some rowdy times in here after a film shoot?
Oh, there were definitely rowdy times.
Location was another draw to Pioneer Town. It was close to Hollywood, and the desert landscape was versatile.
They could duplicate New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, Colorado.
Unfortunately, the popularity of Western films faded out pretty quick.
And so the town sort of died in the mid-50s.
Ultimately, Pioneer Town went bankrupt, and most of the property ended up in the hands of private residents, who continued to play the part of a Western cast for tourists.
You start naturally wearing Western clothes.
Eventually, filmmakers did come back.
Howling 7 was filmed here, and this is a very interesting one, where the budget was so low they just hired the town folk.
Modern-day music videos and commercials make up a majority of the filming, but when tourists visit Pioneer Town, the Western feel is alive and well.
There's something about it that makes you follow Dick Curtis's original dream.
Another popular Western film location is just outside the eastern Sierra town of Lone Pine, home to the Museum of Western Film History.
Here you got guys like Jack Hoxsey, and you got Ken Maynard. These were all the original guys doing silent movies here.
Location, location, location. The unique rocks in the Alabama hills were formed by wind and water erosion, but to Hollywood, it's just another versatile backdrop to mimic places all over the world. In 1939, the Eastern Sierra was made to look like India in the movie Gunga Din. And as recent as 2008, Iron Man blew up a portion of the Owens Valley.
The Alabama Hills is a jewel in the way that it can be any place you want it to be.
It's not a Western, but Buster Keaton headed west to Sacramento in the 1928 silent film Steamboat Bill Jr. The set for this film had one of the most expensive budgets, and the death-defying stunts in this movie were all done by Keaton himself, but when it came out, audiences had mixed reviews. Critics today, though, consider Steamboat Bill Jr. to be a masterpiece of its era.
Did you feel emotional the first time that you drove in Sacramento?
And let's not forget Lady Bird, a postcard picture of Sacramento. The 2017 coming-of-age film was directed by Sacktown native Greta Gerwig and made this blue house a Sacramento landmark. Don't go too far. When we come back, we head out west to see where Hollywood likes to film cowboys and cattle rustlers. Hey, welcome back to Bartell's Backroads. We're taking a look at some of California's famous film locations. Alfred Hitchcock filmed his movie The Birds here in Bodega Bay because it was isolated. But after the premiere, people were flocking to town. Bodega and Bodega Bay. They share similar names, but these are two separate coastal towns with two separate identities. But there is one terrifying event that will forever bond these Sonoma County communities. In 1963, a fury from above rained down on Bodega and Bodega Bay in the frightening Alfred Hitchcock thriller film, The Birds.
See these birds here?
Yeah.
Never saw them.
You didn't?
Never saw them.
These were not in there.
Never saw them.
If there's one person who is not frightened by the birds, it's Jolene Orr, longtime resident of Bodega and child extra in the film. Quickly point yourself out in this thing here. Just
little white sweater.
How old were you in this?
6.
For those of you who have not seen the movie, the plot is pretty simple. Birds attack the town of Bodega Bay for no reason. Then, the movie stars spend the rest of the film trying to avoid being brutally pecked to death by the birds.
They had the mechanical ones.
They weren't real birds?
No, they were not real birds. They had little mechanical things right here, and the birds would...
By today's standards, The Birds is not very realistic, but in 1963, the graphics were considered revolutionary. Like an out-of-control gas station fire, tourists flocked to Bodega and Bodega Bay after the movie released.
We've absorbed it. You know, we all know everyone comes here to look at the schoolhouse because it's in the birds.
Local journalist Andrea Granahan has interviewed just about everyone in town who was involved in the birds, and some of the most memorable moments revolved around Hitchcock and the old Potter Schoolhouse.
He used to allow the people to watch him doing everything, but as long as when he held action, they would duck below their windows.
Andrea also likes to tell the little-known secrets about the film.
But they found where they could get the real good close-ups of birds coming at you was in the San Francisco dump.
There's a fence here right now, but in Hitchcock's 1958 film Vertigo, Kim Novak jumped over the ledge here at Fort Point. The Golden Gate Bridge is just one Bay Area backdrop. San Francisco is home to many famous film locations.
You got to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
Clint Eastwood chased bad guys and shot up the city in the 1971 film Dirty Harry. Over on Steiner Street, you may recognize these Victorian-style buildings. It was the neighborhood where Robin Williams was an elderly nanny in the 1993 film Mrs. Doubtfire. Don't worry, Alcatraz, it's still here. That explosion you saw was from the 1996 film The Rock, starring Nick Cage and Sean Connery. The two narrowly escaped being blown up on the island. About 150 miles north of San Francisco is the little town of Mendocino. It's known for its water towers and its mystery. The historic Blair House is where they filmed many episodes of the mystery drama Murder, She Wrote, which was actually supposed to be set in New England.
She was supposed to live in New England, and Mendocino was often used as a substitute for New England fishing villages because we were on the coast.
You want me to tell you I love you?
The movie Dying Young, starring Julia Roberts, was also filmed here.
And they actually built a house for Julia Roberts for that movie, and this is what it looked like.
Filmed almost entirely on location in Solvang and the Santa Ynez Valley was the movie Sideways. The 2004 film followed two middle-aged men and the women they meet on a wine-tasting adventure/mishap. The town of Solvang actually provides a roadmap of the film's location for tourists to follow. It's old, it's rickety, and it goes uphill and downhill. Next stop, Angel's Flight. Hell, you may recognize it from the summer love scene in the romantic musical La La Land. Or you may have seen it on Amazon's hit detective drama, Bosch.
Man ruined a lot of careers.
This is Angel's Flight, the world's shortest railway.
Now we're 298 feet, so we are the shortest railway in the world.
Built in 1901 by Civil War engineer J.W. Eddy, Angel's Flight is a people mover, transporting passengers in the Bunker Hill area up and down Olive and Hill Street. And according to Angel's Flight Railway Foundation founder John Wilborn, the railway was in great demand because back then the city looked much different.
There were a bunch of houses up here, Victorians, and residential neighborhood here, commercial neighborhood at the bottom.
To save room, the rail cars run on 3 tracks instead of 4 and was engineered using a centuries-old technology called a funicular railway.
Has 2 counterbalance cars connected to the same cable. So when one goes down, the other goes up.
Angel's Flight became a much-loved icon and ran from 1901 to 1969. That's when the city dismantled the railway to redesign Bunker Hill, but they promised locals that they would rebuild the track in just a few years.
A few years for me might be 3 or 4, and it took the city 27 years.
Thanks to John and the Angel's Flight Railway Foundation, the tracks were reinstalled and opened up again in 1996. And today, they move around 2,000 passengers a day up and down the narrow tracks. When we come back, it's an action-packed finale. More famous film locations when we return. Welcome back to Bartell's Backroads, famous film locations edition. You know, in California, action films are some of the most profitable films. Unfortunately, there's just way too many movies to list, so I'm gonna tell you 5 of my favorite films.
That wasn't so bad, was it?
Number 1, Indiana Jones, as his life raft falls off a cliff. The raging water below him is the Tuolumne River, just outside of Yosemite. Number 2, Die Hard, the iconic window drop scene, was filmed at the Fox Plaza in Los Angeles.
It's not personal, Sonny. It's strictly business.
Number 3, Godfather Part 2. Many of these scenes were filmed at a private mansion in Lake Tahoe. Number 4, Stand By Me. The boys narrowly escape being run over by a train crossing a bridge in Shasta County near the town of Bernie. And number 5, Triple X, starring Vin Diesel as he jumps a Corvette off the side of the Forest Hill Bridge into the canyon at Auburn State Recreation Area. Well, if you like those stories, there's a whole lot more where that came from. Just head over to abc10.com/backroads and check out our interactive map. There's a whole list of places that I've visited. And heck, you may even be able to find a trip of your own. I'm John Bartell. Hope to see you on the back road.